The world is filled with good things. We see beauty in nature and love in human relationships. Yet there is also a darkness, a brokenness that we cannot ignore. It is the reality of sin. Where did this evil come from? How did a world created good become tainted by sin? These questions have troubled humanity for centuries. Many stories and explanations have been offered, but the Bible gives a clear and profound answer. It speaks of a time when everything was perfect, a paradise where sin had no place. This is where our exploration begins, in the Garden of Eden, with the story of the fall of man. From a young age, we are taught about right and wrong. We learn that actions have consequences. But the concept of sin runs deeper than mere disobedience. It speaks of a fundamental separation from God, a break in the perfect harmony that once existed. To truly understand the nature of sin, we must go back to its origin. We must journey back to the beginning and witness the fall of man. In the beginning, God created a perfect world. He made Adam, the first man, and Eve, the first woman, placing them in the Garden of Eden. It was a paradise filled with every good thing. Adam and Eve lived in perfect harmony with God and with each other. They were innocent and pure, unaware of the concept of evil. However, this state of bliss was not to last forever. God, in his wisdom, gave Adam and Eve one simple command. They were not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. This tree represented a boundary, a line that was not to be crossed. To eat from it would be to choose their own way over God's, to grasp at knowledge that was not theirs to possess. This act of disobedience, this deliberate choice to disobey God's command, was the first sin. It was a turning point in human history, a fall from grace with far-reaching consequences. The world, once perfect, was now tainted by sin. The harmony between God and humanity was broken, and the effects of that first sin would continue to reverberate throughout generations. The serpent, described as cunning and crafty, approached Eve. He whispered doubts about God's words, questioning his motives and suggesting that God was withholding something good from them. The serpent tempted Eve with the promise of knowledge and power, assuring her that if she ate the forbidden fruit, she would become like God, knowing good and evil. Eve, swayed by the serpent's deception and enticed by the allure of forbidden knowledge, succumbed to temptation. She ate the fruit and then gave some to Adam, who also chose to disobey God's command. At that moment, their innocence was lost. They became aware of their nakedness and felt shame for the first time. The serpent's cunning words had planted seeds of doubt and rebellion, leading them astray from God's loving guidance. This act of disobedience marked the entry of sin into the world. The serpent's deception had shattered the trust between God and humanity, setting in motion a chain of consequences that would forever alter the course of human history. The once pristine Garden of Eden, a symbol of God's perfect creation, was now tainted by the stain of sin. The immediate consequence of their sin was a profound sense of shame and fear. They hid from God, realizing the gravity of what they had done. When God confronted them, Adam blamed Eve and Eve blamed the serpent. This attempt to evade responsibility became a defining characteristic of sin. God, in his perfect justice, pronounced consequences for their disobedience. Adam and Eve were banished from the Garden of Eden, their idyllic life in paradise lost. The world, once free from pain and suffering, became a place of toil and hardship. Childbirth would be painful and relationships would be marred by conflict. However, God, in his infinite mercy, did not abandon them completely. He provided clothing for them and promised a future Redeemer who would ultimately conquer sin and death. This promise offered a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness of their sin. The consequences of their actions were severe, but God's love and grace remained, a beacon pointing towards redemption and restoration. Section 5. The Stain of Sin, Understanding Its Nature. Sin is more than just breaking a set of rules. It is a deep-seated rebellion against God, a deliberate turning away from his love and authority. You see, it is choosing our own desires over his will, putting ourselves at the center of our universe instead of him. This self-centeredness, this pride and desire for autonomy, lies at the heart of sin. The Bible describes sin as a stain, a corruption that affects every part of our being. It is not merely an external act, but an internal condition, a disease of the soul. Just as a drop of ink can spread and discolor a glass of water, so sin spreads through our thoughts, our words, and our actions, polluting everything it touches. Sin is not merely a personal failing, it has far-reaching consequences. It affects our relationships with others, creating division, conflict, and pain. It also impacts the world around us, leading to injustice, poverty, and environmental degradation. Understanding the true nature of sin is essential for recognizing its destructive power in our lives and in the world. Section 6. Disobedience and rebellion, sin as a relational offense. Sin is not simply a list of do's and don'ts. It's a relational offense, a breach of trust between us and the one who created us. When we sin, we are essentially saying to God, "Your way is not good enough for me. I know better than you." This act of rebellion damages our relationship with our Creator, the source of our very being. Imagine a child deliberately disobeying their parent, not out of ignorance but out of defiance. It is not simply the act itself that hurts the parent, but the betrayal of trust, the lack of respect for their love and authority. Similarly, sin grieves the heart of God. It is a rejection of His love, a slap in the face to His grace. This relational aspect of sin is often overlooked. We tend to focus on the external consequences, the guilt, the shame, the punishment. But the real tragedy of sin is the damage it inflicts on our relationship with God. It creates a chasm between us, separating us from the source of life and love. Section 7. A spectrum of perspectives, different views on sin. Throughout history, theologians and philosophers have grappled with the concept of sin, offering various interpretations of its origin and nature. Pelagius, a 5th century monk, believed that humans are born free from sin and possess the inherent capacity to choose good or evil. He emphasized free will and downplayed the idea of original sin, suggesting that Adam's sin did not inherently corrupt humanity. The Roman Catholic Church, on the other hand, affirms the doctrine of original sin, believing that Adam's disobedience transmitted a state of sinfulness to all his descendants. However, they also emphasize God's grace and the sacraments as means to overcome this inherited sinfulness. They believe in the possibility of achieving righteousness through faith and good works. Evolutionary perspectives offer a more naturalistic explanation, viewing sin as a byproduct of our evolutionary past. They see behaviors considered sinful as remnants of our primal instincts, gradually being overcome through social and moral progress. These diverse perspectives highlight the complexity of understanding sin. While differing in their interpretations, they all grapple with the reality of good and evil, the human capacity for both, and the need for redemption. Section 8. Beyond ourselves, the need for redemption. The story of the fall is not merely an ancient tale. It is a mirror reflecting the human condition. We all bear the image of God, created for a life of love and communion with Him. Yet we also bear the stain of sin, that inherent tendency to choose our own way over His. We see it in our selfishness, our pride, our desire to be our own gods. This realization of our sinfulness should not lead to despair, but to a deeper understanding of our need for redemption. We cannot save ourselves from the consequences of our sin. We need a power outside of ourselves, a love that can bridge the chasm we have created. This is where the good news of the gospel comes in. God, in His infinite love and mercy, provided a way for us to be reconciled to Him. He sent His Son, Jesus Christ, to take the penalty for our sins, to bridge the gap that separated us from Him. Through faith in Jesus Christ and His sacrifice on the cross, we can experience forgiveness, healing, and a restored relationship with God. Section 9. The importance of understanding. Understanding the origin and nature of sin is not merely an academic exercise. It is fundamental to grasping the Christian faith and our place in the universe. It humbles us, reminding us that we are not the center of all things and that our choices have consequences. It also fills us with hope, knowing that we are not defined by our failures and that there is a way back to God. When we understand the depth of our sin, we can begin to appreciate the immeasurable grace and love of God who offers us forgiveness and redemption. We can approach Him with humility and gratitude, recognizing that our salvation is not something we deserve, but a free gift of His amazing grace. As we journey through life, we will inevitably stumble and fall short of God's glory. But the story of the fall reminds us that we are not alone in our struggle. God is always there, ready to forgive, to heal, and to guide us back to himself. By understanding the origin and nature of sin, we can embrace his offer of redemption and experience the fullness of life that he intended for us from the very beginning.